Welcome. It's Liza Lawrence with Wonders and Miracles podcast, episode 11, All Things Work Together for My Good. Welcome to Wonders and Miracles podcast, where we celebrate miraculous moments in everyday lives. I'm your host, Liza Lawrence, a wife, mother, teacher, and miracle lover. If you're new to this podcast, here's what we do here. Each week, on Miracle Monday, we celebrate awe-inspiring true stories from regular people like you and me. People who have experienced something surprising and wonderful that could be considered the work of a divine source. My desire is to help us recognize God's hand and His love in our lives, because the more miracles we notice, the more miracles happen. Thanks for listening to the show. Now let's celebrate wonders and miracles together. Romans 8:28, it says, "And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose." So last week I mentioned that we were going to be hearing a woman's journey through depression and the miracles that she saw in that journey. But I'm postponing that. I'm not quite done with that one. And so that will be sometime in November. I'll keep you posted. It really is a beautiful episode. So I'm excited to share that with you. But instead, today's episode, we're going to hear 3 stories where things worked out for the good of those involved. Obviously, that seems to be the theme of a miracle, is things working for our good. And to the receiver, it's an awareness that God knows and loves you, and that He is on your side. So these are inspiring stories, all 3 of them. Thank you, ladies, for your participation. Can't wait to share those. But first, a plug for our sponsor, Meditations on the Mount. Meditations on the Mount are Bible-based meditations that my family's been using for years. Okay, it does help that my husband and I created them, but seriously, they are wonderful. If you've ever longed for ways to feel God's love, peace, and stillness in your life, Meditations on the Mount can help. We have 2 albums, one for adults and one for children. This week, though, I'd really like to plug the course offered by Meditations on the Mount. If you've ever wondered how to meditate, or if meditation fits into Christianity, then this is the course for you. This meditation course takes you through 15 lessons on how and why meditation is important, and practice sessions of the meditations. For more information on how to register for this course, you can visit meditationsonthemount.com and click the link at the top that says Meditation Course. Here's a review for this course that we had from Heather. She said, "This is wonderful. No complaints. Christian meditation has been a part of my life for over a decade now, but I appreciate the formal teaching and all the wonderful insights the instructor has given so far. Last night, meditating with Jesus after the first class was so deep and meaningful, His presence so sweet with guidance for my life. I'm very grateful. Thank you." Thanks, Heather, for that review. Go check out this course from Meditations on the Mount if you would like to learn more about how to meditate. All right, well, let's get started with the show. I want to also let you know, stay tuned to the very end, because I have an exciting announcement to make that's going to be fun for the month of November. So wait till the end and I'll let you know about that. Okay, so I have Sherry here from Utah, and she's going to share a story that happened in her family with a young baby. Not her baby, her granddaughter. Sherry, thank you so much for being on the show, and let's hear your story.
Okay. When my son Nick and his wife Angie lived in Germany with their 2 children, they found out they were expecting number 3. One of the best hospitals in the area was an hour away in Munich. Angie was a high-risk pregnancy, and so she was monitored very closely. So was the baby. They said everything was normal and okay. When the baby was born, she was Down syndrome. Usually they terminate these babies early in the pregnancy in Germany. And also, if the baby is born, they put them in a home for Down syndrome babies.
So is this normal practice? They'll abort the babies in Germany?
They abort most of them.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And see, they didn't pick up that she was Down syndrome, and she was so closely watched.
Really? And they never picked it up?
Never picked it up.
Wow.
No. In fact, a doctor did a piece on them, and they were in the paper that they kept their Down syndrome baby.
Really? Because it was such an unusual thing to do?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
Nick has the paper. Yeah.
How interesting. Okay.
Okay. Berlin was born with a hole in her heart, and it didn't look favorable. Nick and Angie flew home to Primary Children's Hospital in Salt Lake City, Utah. Berlin was checked, and they were told it didn't look good. Many DS children die from heart problems. They were to go home to Smithfield, to where we all live, and prepare to start surgery tomorrow, take care of their kids, and pack a bag. We as a family on both sides prayed with all our hearts and faith that all would be well, and the doctors would be able to help Berlin. The next morning, they took baby Berlin back for surgery. When she was examined before surgery, the hole had totally closed up and was no longer there. Our prayers for a miracle were answered, and little Berlin has been a shining light in our lives and teaches us many important lessons.
That is so amazing. Tell me more about Berlin. So she was the baby born with Down syndrome, and she had this hole in her heart, which that's kind of common, right?
It's just common in these DS babies.
Yeah. So tell me, you mentioned that you've learned so much and she's been a light. What have you learned from, and I know she's your granddaughter, but what have you learned and your family's learned through her in your family?
How to treat someone that is different. And you can see in her face, she pulls a certain face and looks up into the corner or the sky, and we're sure she's seeing someone there to help her.
Oh, interesting.
It is so interesting. She lights up, squishes her face, and looks up in the corner or outside up in the sky, and we feel like that somebody's there to help her.
Wow. And she can perceive that person, that angel, someone.
Yes.
Neat.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we love it. The little kids are learning to treat someone different. You know, like Krista's little boy that's 3. At first, he didn't want to hold her hand or anything because she's loud and she's very strong personality. And she memorizes like crazy. But it has taught him to treat them good when they're different.
Right. And those are valuable lessons for sure.
Very, very, yes.
So it's amazing. You guys all prayed and the hole in her heart just healed right up, didn't it?
It did. It closed right up. Now that's so shocking, but that's the power of prayer.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that.
Both sides of the family, we all prayed all night long.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
It is. All right.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Liza.
So our next caller, Mari, we kind of had a bad connection at times, so you'll get the gist of the story if you're listening, but if it cuts out here and there, just know that we were having a hard connection. All right, well, I have Mari on the phone right now, and she's from Texas, and she heard about the podcast on our website, BibleDice.com, and that's really fun to know where she heard about us and that website is useful to her. So she's going to share a story that happened this summer. So Mari, thanks for being on the show, and let's hear your story.
Thanks very much, Liza. I'm glad to be able to tell the story, and even in the retelling, just to be reminded of it. It was June, and I had just parked into my parking spot from work on a Friday afternoon, and it was seasonably hot here in Texas. I cracked my window. I don't normally do that. About a 1/4 inch on the driver's side. On this day, I don't know, just I did. I was at my house, but I went in. My car, by the way, is more than 10 years old, faded. It's dinged up, and it's manual transmission, so people wouldn't even be able to do anything with it.
I grew up learning how to drive on a manual, actually.
Okay. I think it's, it's fun to drive, and they tend to be more reliable and everything like that. Yeah. But I went into my house, and 5 o'clock in the morning, I realizing I didn't have cat food. So I went out to go get cat food and noticed my car was gone. And I thought it might have been my apartment complex. And I called the tow line, and the tow company said, no, we don't have anything like that. I haven't picked up anybody from there. So at that point, I had nothing to do but call the police and report it. This was just a, kind of a puzzle of why anybody would want that car I'm newly saved, or maybe I'm newly awakened to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I trusted that personally, God was working things in my favor, and just to be patient. And I notified employer and let them know I may not get everywhere that I'm supposed to get to, but I'm going to see what I can do. So I simply walked 5 miles. I got up early and I walked to where I need to be. And one client drove me back home on that day, but I continued to walk. I think just another day until I got a bicycle kind of worked out. By Friday is when I got a phone call from the police that my car had appeared, and where it had been found was in a church parking lot and apparently drivable. It was intriguing. And a friend of mine from over there, and we spoke with the tow truck guys and heard one of them out, like he needed to be reassured. He was somebody who'd been doing it for 30 years, and he cleared accidents on every intersection in this town. It seems like something like that would be the kind of person. So we thanked him, for basically being kind of a first or second responder, and gave him what he needed. But sure enough, my car, it is how I expected it to be. Whoever had stolen it didn't keep it long. And the thing too was when I shared this story with my social network, somebody said, "Oh yeah, that happened to my mother. And when the car got returned, it had new tires on it."
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. My particular situation, I didn't have new tires, but either way, I considered it a confirmation, a miracle in a way.
So when your car was stolen, you hadn't left the keys in the car, or were the keys in there? How did they take the car? You don't know anything like that, do you?
Oh, no. Yeah, the keys were not in the car. Someone else in my town who drives the model said, "Yeah, that happened to our car too." And we couldn't figure it out either. So that little mystery remains. Yeah.
Yeah. And how interesting and maybe pertinent that it was left in a church parking lot, right? As maybe another little sign, kind of a God wink, like, here you go.
Yeah.
That's fun.
And I took the opportunity to visit that church. I've been doing that. I don't have a home church yet. And I had a great time. It was an introductory story of why I had come to their church. People got a kick out of it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, neat. So what were some of the things that you learned personally from this experience as far as God's concerned or your relationship with him?
To trust that all things are working for your good. Sometimes what suffering is really just you being used as a tool. I sometimes struggle with that wording, but I'm getting over that. I'm happy to be a servant to God.
I love that.
If it meant that I was inconvenient a little bit, because one thing that it did do too is it demonstrated to the people that I visited how important it was for me to be there. Being a new Christian, I just did my work to God's will, and I proved it to my conscience, and all of these things.
Yeah, I love that you demonstrated to those that you worked with that you were there, even though it was inconvenient for you. The word I like to use is being an instrument for the Lord, and
better
that he can use us to bless people around us. And I'm so grateful to be that instrument that I can say, I'll help wherever you want me to help. I can do that. And just even being an example, honestly, the example that you set speaks volumes. It shows that you're a follower of Christ, that you are a Christian as you love those around you. I love that. Well, thank you, Mari, for sharing your story.
Thank you for teaching me instrument. That's so much better.
Well, I don't know. It's probably the same idea, but that's the word I like.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Well, good.
Thank you so much, Liza, for the work that you do.
Well, thank you. I'm so grateful that you found it and that you're participating. So I did a follow-up question with Mari, but didn't record her response. But I asked, before you were awakened to Christ, how would you have handled this experience of your car being stolen versus how you handled it as a Christian? Because as a Christian, she handled it with trust that something good was going to come out of this, that God was in charge and that something would be working in her favor, whether it was meeting someone new, perhaps finding a church. Who knows how this is guiding her life or her journey? And her response was, she said, "That's an excellent question. I would have resented the person who stole the car. I would have been suspicious of all my neighbors. Both feelings I might be justified in having, but which I ignored or didn't feel because for that car to be stolen just seemed so unlikely. It seemed like an act of God." The other thing she mentioned too is that the air condition belt was in need of replacement when they took it. So she says what was an acquired deprivation for me or for her must have been the reason that they decided to ditch the car, because it was about 100 degrees in Texas at that time. So amazing that she didn't have those feelings. I think that is quite a miracle, actually, that she didn't have those negative feelings of resentment and suspicion and judgment of those around her. So, Mari, thanks for sharing that little insight. And it was really a pleasure to meet you and visit with you about this miracle experience in your life. All right, so our next guest is Melissa from Utah, and she has a story that happened 12 years ago with the birth of her third child. Like I've said on previous episodes, I think the process of birth is always a miracle, and her birth story certainly is a miracle. So Melissa, thanks for being on the show, and tell us your story.
Thanks, Liza. So 12 and a half years ago, my daughter is 12 and a half now, I was getting ready. It was 2 weeks before the delivery time, and my doctor had done some lab work, and he gave me a call and said, "The lab work isn't looking great. We need to go ahead and start you so that we can deliver this baby." Previous backstory is, with my other two children, I had placenta accreta, and that is a rare thing that happens where the placenta grows through the uterus and tries to attach to the surrounding organs. In severe cases, it is fatal. You don't survive that because you bleed out. Gratefully, with my other two, it hadn't reached the severe yet. It had gotten pretty close. So the fact that I was having a third, I was a high-risk pregnancy. So my doctor was keeping good tabs on me. So like I said, 2 weeks before the due date, he called and said, "Lab works aren't looking great. I really want to take the baby early. You need to come in tomorrow morning and we're going to start you." So that night, I asked my husband and my dad to give me a blessing, and they did so. And in the blessing, I was promised that I would live to raise my children, that all would be well. And that gave me so much peace and comfort going into this birth. With placenta accreta, you cannot test for it beforehand, at least during this time, 12 and a half years ago. You can't test for it before. There's no ultrasound. There's no way to indicate if accreta is happening. So you kind of go in blind. So I went to the hospital that next morning. They started me on Pitocin, got me going. I went into labor, and had I delivered my daughter, the doctor got very concerned because she came out covered in blood instead of, just the normal fluids. And so he knew something was going wrong. So, and then I just kept bleeding, and they gave me all sorts of medications to clamp down my uterus to try and stop the bleeding. They had pulled the placenta out, but it had come out in several pieces. It was not an intact placenta. During this time, I was in and out of consciousness, and I remember the nurse yelling to the doctor, my blood pressure, I think is what they were yelling, and her saying numbers like 32, 34, different things like that, and him just working frantically. And he, at two different points in that process, the first time he went over to my husband and said, "You can't stop the bleeding. You need to be prepared to say goodbye."
You maybe don't know, but what was your husband thinking about that time?
Well, he had seen, with my other two children, it had been kind of an intense birthing experience with the other two also, but he had never had the doctor say, I might not be able to save her.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was his, good grief, I'm going to cry. I think it was a really trying time for him. It was a wake-up call, definitely, that this could not go the way that we want it to go. So I again was in and out of consciousness. He came over to me, and I remember him bending over and kissing me and just telling me that he loved me so much and that he was crying. And I do remember thinking in my head, because I was truly in and out, so I couldn't necessarily talk well. But I remember thinking in my head, what's wrong? Everything's going to be fine. Why are you, because he was so afraid, like his energy was afraid. And I remember thinking, it's okay. You don't need to be afraid. Everything's going to be fine. And then I think I passed out.
And where did your assurance come from? Where did that faith that everything was going to be okay come from?
Honestly, it was just a feeling. I just knew. It was just a knowing. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure it helped that the night before I had received that blessing where I was told I would raise my children. And so I knew I would. It was like, I'm going to be fine. Things might look bad right now, or the birth might be tough, or recovery might be tough, but I'm going to raise my children. It was just a knowing. And so it was just that. I just knew. So I was not afraid as I was in and out of consciousness. I think more than anything, I was a little bit irritated.
Why?
Because I was missing, like, what's going on? Like, I want to know. I'm a very curious person, especially when it comes to medical things. Like, I want to know what's happening. And so I was irritated that I was passing out and then coming to and then passing out and then coming to. I'm missing the party.
That's some party, huh?
Yeah. But so with my husband, though, the doctor just really, he said, and I don't know time-wise how long of a time period passed, but the second time he again said to my husband, you really need to be prepared. I cannot stop the bleeding. And I don't know where this is coming from. We're going to lose her. And I guess with a CREDA, it's very, very risky to go in and just do a hysterectomy, because as soon as you open the person up, if the placenta grew without the uterus, then it's attached to the surrounding organs, and that's where the internal bleeding is happening. And an operation would exacerbate and quicken the bleeding. So they didn't want to do that. They did not want to take me into the OR. So it was just kind of a wait and see game, which is really very hard for those people. But all of a sudden, out of the blue, my husband said, it slowed. And the doctor just got hopeful and said, oh, I think it's slowing down. I think it's slowing down. And it did. The bleeding started to slow down, and my blood pressure started to get back up a little bit. I got conscious again, and I was aware of things. And I remember being aware of the doctor's face and then my husband's face. He was just right there next to me and looking at me and holding my hand. And then the doctor said, I think we're in the clear. Let's take her. And they put me in a holding room just to make sure that the bleeding was indeed stopping. So that is my story.
It's amazing. So after that, how long was your recovery?
Well, okay. So with my first child, my son, the similar thing happened, and I was given a blood transfusion. I had lost so much blood, I was given a blood transfusion. But the blood I received was what they call Kel negative, and I am Kel positive. So I reacted to it. Essentially, it was bad blood for me. So I built up a bunch of antibodies, and it made me very, very sick. So with his birth, after his birth, it took me about 2.5 years to really get better. And after this birth, this third baby, again, I had lost so much blood that they were going to hook me up to a transfusion. And I was awake and alert enough. I'm so grateful, because I refused it. I said, no, I do not want a transfusion. And it felt very strong. And I don't know where it came from, but I just felt very strongly to not accept a transfusion, that I needed to build up my own blood supply. The doctor was not the same doctor that delivered. Gratefully, he was there for the birth and delivery, but he had gone on vacation the next day. And so it was the next morning that a different doctor, a female doctor, came in and said, we're hooking you up to a transfusion. This is what the process is. And I said, no. And she was livid. She was so angry and said, you cannot refuse this. And I said, yes, I can. I do not want a transfusion. I want to do this by myself. I want to have my blood that's clean. And she just was very angry. And I just felt so strongly that I should not get a transfusion. This doctor said that she would not allow me to leave unless my platelets were at a certain number, and that the only way to get them to that would be to receive a transfusion. And I again said, no, I refuse the transfusion. I'm fine to stay here a few more days. My body can build it up. It's okay. And so she said, well, tomorrow I want you to go down to the lab and, you're going to get that lab work done to see where they're at. So she gave me that extra time. And it really was quite miraculous with how much blood I lost, that when I went to the lab and had that lab work done, it was the exact lowest number that she had permitted to say, okay, if it's at least this, then I won't require a transfusion. And it was exactly that. So I was able to maintain my stance of no transfusion, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah, that is quite miraculous.
Yeah.
And I think it shows that the Lord really was supporting the need for you to win that battle, if you will, with the doctor saying, no, I stand firm on my decision not to have a transfusion.
Yes, definitely. Yes, that was the Lord's hand for sure. And so I went home, and it took about 2 months for me to finally build up that blood supply and that energy again. My sweet husband, I was on bed rest for 6 full weeks after the baby was born. So he was in the process of getting his master's degree at this time. He was working full time, getting his master's degree, and then had a wife that was on bed rest with 2 little kids and a brand new baby. And he was phenomenal to do all of that. And he never once complained. He just supported and loved and served nonstop. And several of my family members came and helped, and neighbors and church members. We were surrounded by a lot of support during that time. It was very sweet.
Well, and he was probably just so grateful to have you still alive and in his life.
Definitely. He says that, definitely. He said, I almost lost you, and, I will never take you for granted, ever.
Oh,
he's very sweet.
That is sweet. Yeah. Wow. Well, miraculous story, and wonderful that your body kicked in and stopped the bleeding, and that you were able to survive that. And you said this baby's 12 and a half years old, so you obviously have been around to help raise those children. That blessing has
Yes,
come
I
to
have.
pass and will continue.
Yes. I am very grateful every day.
That is awesome. Well, thank you, Melissa, for sharing your story. I really do appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, thanks for joining me today. I loved all of those stories. Thank you, ladies, for your participation and your witness that God is still around and miracles still happen. I just love that. These are so beautiful. Okay, it is time for my big announcement that I promised you at the beginning of the episode. Woo woo, here we go. I am so excited to announce for the whole month of November, in honor of my favorite holiday coming up, which is Thanksgiving, starting November 1st, the whole month, as a way to say thank you for your support with my podcast, and also as a way to spread the word about my podcast, I am doing a massive giveaway. And this is what you get. I'd like to offer every single listener a free album. And you can choose either Meditations on the Mount for Children or the regular Meditations on the Mount. Even if you already have either album, you can give it as a Christmas gift. Christmas is coming up too. Here's what you need to do to claim your album. First, you need to go to either my Instagram page or my Facebook page. Either one, whichever one you use mostly. If you go to the Instagram page, my Instagram handle is Wonders and Miracles, and open that and you'll see the post for this giveaway, and then follow the directions for the giveaway. Same thing on Facebook. My Facebook page is Wonders and Miracles. Like the page, and then you'll be able to see the post for the instructions on the giveaway. Every single listener will get a Meditations on the Mount album for following the directions on either page. Where I'm hoping to spread the word. I want you to share the pages and tag people so that we can let people know that this is a really uplifting and inspiring podcast out there. There's so many podcasts, and great podcasts I listen to a lot, that sometimes people don't know that this is a new podcast. And because I've just been going for a couple months, I'm still not up on the charts yet. So I want to spread the word. And as a way to thank you for helping me with this, I'm doing this massive giveaway. So I think you're going to love these meditations, though. They really are beautiful. Isn't that exciting? I'm excited. I'm excited to reach more people, and I'm excited to say thank you. Also, remember, you can offer your support by first subscribing to the podcast, rating it, give it a 5-star rating, write a review on any of the apps that you listen on, and feel free to share it with as many people as you know. And hopefully this giveaway will help entice you to spread the word. Help me spread the word about an uplifting part of your week. As a thank you, I want to give a shout out to a listener who rated the podcast. This was a 5-star rating. Jay Simmons said, "These are great. I started listening to a couple of these podcasts while doing yard work the other day, and not only found myself drawn to the stories, but have also started to consider the miracles in my own life. Liza does an excellent job facilitating and bringing these examples to light. I'm inspired by what I hear." Thank you, Jay Simmons, for that review, and I'm so glad you're being inspired. That is the goal, and that's my desire. In Romans chapter 8, verse 28, "And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose." I want to wish everyone a happy Halloween coming up in 2 days. Be safe, be smart, have fun, but always remember to notice and celebrate the miracles in your life, because the more miracles we notice, the more miracles happen.